right, good evening everyone. Welcome to our Discovery Wednesday class with Guy Finley. My name is Kate. If this is your first time here joining us, here's the format for tonight. In just a moment, Guy is going to come on and give an hour-long talk, and then we'll take a short 5-minute break and we'll come back for part 2 of class, which is an open Q&A discussion with all of you here in the room and everyone online as well. So hope you're able to stay for the full hour and a half, and this class is being recorded, so you'll be able to go back and watch the replay if you wish. Let's see, for those of you in the room, if you have a cell phone that you brought into the room, if you could please check and make sure that it's off or in silent mode. And for those of you online, if you have any tech issues during our class, you can reach out to us in the GoToWebinar control panel if that's where you're watching from, or just in the chat area of Facebook or YouTube, and I'll be there behind the scenes to help if I can. You can also email support@guyfinley.org, and that comes straight to me, and I'll help you out as best I can. All right, I think we're ready to get started with class. You ready for me to get going? Okay, great. So our title for tonight's class is Freedom from the Painful Voices in Your Head. And here's the key lesson. Here's the real reason why talking to ourselves about whatever is considered to be the cause of that conversation in our head is so exhausting. It's very hard work to make something so big out of what really amounts to nothing.
Okay, there's a problem. We're a little short-staffed this evening, so we have to kind of multitask some of the people that are behind the scenes. Kate's just making sure that we're streaming on all the other platforms. Just take a moment. All good? Okay. Welcome, everyone in the room, everyone joining us from wherever you are in the world, whatever day or time it is. As always, I'm glad that you're here, because I'm glad that we have the opportunity to talk about some of the things that you most likely never get a chance to talk about with others in this world. In this instance, our topic is, and I just want to make sure I'm talking to the right group of people, freedom from the painful voices in your head. How many of you have painful voices in your head? I suppose one of the most difficult things about a person's authentic spiritual work, and by that I mean a work that brings about a new impression of some kind every day, so that you never go through a day without having discovered something about yourself that changes your relationship to yourself. Any day that goes by without that is a wasted day. Mark my words. Now, one of the reasons that we have so many wasted days, and I know that we do, because I can see that most of you are in a constant daze of a sort, is because we don't know what's going on with our life. We don't understand how our energy is being squandered. So many times an aspirant will say, well, you know, how do I get closer to God? How do I establish a more firm relationship with the divine? I would like to have some more of that peace in my heart that I've seen and know exists, but that seems so difficult to be in constant relationship with. And to those men and women, including yourselves, I say it's very simple. You see, just as an example, if you ever see a lake, a pond, And in that lake or pond, you can see with great clarity the reflection of something. Do you know what makes possible that reflection with its clarity? Surface tension. Surface tension. The surface of that lake is so still that the molecular structure of it is essentially a web of a sort. And that web bound together, meaning not moving, the more tension there is in the surface of that lake, the more profoundly it reflects what appears in it. Do you understand that? Your life is spent trying to avoid that tension. And I'm going to prove this to you. I have no axe to grind. The older I become, the more mature these teachings become within the speaker. It's so evident to me, the things that were never evident before, but that one must, if they're ever going to have any kind of relationship where they can sit in the morning in spite of what the day may be pouring down on them, so that all of those moments they sit there and they are receptive. And you can't be receptive when you are talking to yourself. Period. You don't know yet, and you can't until some of the energy that is wasted in that endless conversation with yourself or others, you can't know that, I'm just going to pick a figure, 80% of the energy that you need to be able to sustain the attention to that tension, to that capacity that you have to be still enough to be endlessly receiving the impressions that we spoke about on Sunday, did we not? No room at the inn. Why is there no room at the inn? Because the inn is filled with endless talking to yourself. Now, I knew when I started to map out these ideas that I intended to present to you, that I was going to be treading on some sensitive ground. Because most of us, to one extent or another, in one way or another, have struggled with these voices, these thoughts, this dialogue, this incessant dialogue. And found in one way or another that we hope to God no one is ever privileged to listen into the conversations we have with ourselves about ourselves and others. Yes or no? Yes. Doug said to me last class, he said, no one joining us here on the web can actually hear whether people say yes or no. He said, you could have them say it louder and it won't make any. I'm not asking you just for the sake of the people that are there. I'm asking you to align yourself with what is being revealed to you, so that you can experience directly the ideas, instead of allowing yourself to be what? Do you know why you disappear from the talks? Because something starts talking to you. But when something starts talking to you at home, wherever you are, and instead of being in the presence of something that has the possibility of reinvigorating your wish to make room at the inn, to know something of the divine, you're just carried off. And it isn't until a person starts to recognize that that's always going on that they can begin to understand, which I want you to do, and I'm taking pains to lead you to this, is that while we're talking to ourselves tonight, you mustn't judge yourself. What is judging yourself? Is that not a conversation with yourself? So you mustn't do the very thing that we're going to take pains and time to point out. Because until you recognize the reason there is for this incessant judgment is because without you knowing it, inside this unconscious nature, there is something that never stops comparing what it should be and how it imagines it should be to the experience it's having of itself. So that if I'm caught suddenly having these thoughts, and you ought to know by now, it amazes me in some respect that you don't see it. How many of you know you talk to yourself about others, about people, about friends, family, and no more do you talk to yourself about these things than you judge yourself for the talking you're having? Yes or no? And you feel bad that I feel that way. God, please try to understand this. The reason you, in quotes, feel bad about the way you feel and talk to yourself about that is because you think it's you that feels either way. And it is not. It's not you that wants to get rid of somebody, that wants to avoid a conversation, and it's not you that judges you for the action your own mind is telling you to take. But without knowing it, you're drawn into this dialogue that drags you through all kinds of muck because you're so used to feeling bad about yourself or hoping that you can talk to yourself about how to get past the pain that it's never dawned on you. It is not you engaged in the conversation. It isn't you talking to yourself. What if you knew that? What if you actually understood that the more that you allow this conversation to go on uninvestigated, the greater inside of you grows this illusion that these dialogues that are going on are started by you, and that somehow or other you must end what you've started. How can you end what you've started? Please try to see the contradiction in it. My mind starts down a certain path, yes or no? Starts talking about this and starts talking about that. And no more does it get about 30 feet down the road than it says, don't go down that road, or that's not the right road, or there's a better road for you to go on. And you go, thank God you mentioned that. And then you start talking to your mind about the next road until you get 30 feet down that road and find yourself dirty with all kinds of thoughts and feelings that are inappropriate to something in you whose image says I shouldn't have those thoughts and feelings. That's called hell. So to set the stage, as I want to for this evening, as best we're able, I want to help you understand, as I intimated a few moments ago, that these talks that we have with ourselves, and by the way, let me ask you, can you just walk away from the talk you're having with yourself? Well, if you're talking to yourself, how come you can't just walk away from it? If I start the talk, I can end the talk, can't I? Yes or no? That would be logical. The reason we can't walk away from them is because despite the familiar illusion, that talk is not taking place between you and yourself. Doesn't it seem, if you can do this with me, I don't know how sensitive you are to this. Some people are so afraid. You know, why do you think people drink and drug the way they do? For that matter, why do you think most of the distractions are? It's to get away from being in this constantly engaged relationship with thoughts and feelings that just go hither and yon, never take you anywhere, and always are trying to refresh themselves with some new plan to free you. It's just endless. That talking to yourself, that dialogue, is the activity of a divided mind that is constantly trying to reconcile the conflict that it creates in itself. That's what all of that talking is. That talking is a mind in conflict with itself and trying to figure out by talking to itself how it can bring the conflict that it brought upon itself through its desires, imaginations, identification. You can see that, can't you? If you're identified with something, you're going to resist it. If you resist it, you're in conflict. If I'm in conflict, now I'm in pain. Now I have to figure out what to do about this pain. And how do I do all of that? What's the endless process that I'm involved in? You'll be stunned one day, and may God make it that your minds start to grow silent enough that you're aware of the intrusion of thought. The intrusion of it. Can you see until you're aware and see thought as an intrusion, meaning thoughts about myself, thoughts about you, thoughts about what's going to... Can you see that until you recognize that those thoughts as an intrusion into your right to be the reflection of the divine, to be quiet? Until you see it as an intrusion, you will make it an inclusion, won't you? That's what I want to work with you tonight. I want to help you get to the point where you start to actually recognize the intrusion as opposed to the desire to join in this inclusive talk that you have with yourself. So we always do this on Wednesday nights, and we're going to start right now. Wide awake? Are any of you upset already? All right. On Wednesdays, we have a different kind of class if you're joining us for the first time, where instead of just pure exposition and then a dialogue afterwards, I start somewhere in the first part of the meeting to bring the students in this room and you who are joining us online, to bring you into the study, so that by becoming part of the study, participating in it, we become active in the work that we're doing here. By agreeing to, in this instance, we're going to make a list, and we can bring up that list now, please, that we're going to grow from the people in the room and those of you joining us, and here is what the list says. Nice deep breath, you can read along with me. There is little doubt that most of us can come up with at least one example, but for our group study this evening, name one of those things in your life that you find yourself most likely to talk to yourself about. In other words, fess up. Please try to say this. You know why you don't sleep? Because the mind never rests. And the reason the mind never rests is because it continually tries to wrest from itself by bringing an end to the resistance it has in itself to the world that it has made from itself that it can never reconcile. So it's just all the time active. And then you get into bed and you wonder why you're still having conversations. There's no one there with you. It's just going on, isn't it? And it filters into the dreams. So our list is, there's little doubt most of us can come up with one example. Things in your life that you find yourself most likely to talk to yourself about. And I'm going to seed the list as I always do. And I'm going to ask, oh, they're already coming up. That was fast. Well, maybe I won't seed the list. Yeah, okay. So right away, Tony says, my spouse. Robert says, money. Finance. Don says my faults. How about in the room? Babs.
Making plans.
You can talk too much. You worry me to death. I plan and I talk and I plan and I talk. Chris.
Self-condemnation.
That's a big one. That was one on this list that I was going to share with you. I am for almost always in one way or another talking about some inadequacy of mine. Ellen.
Reliving conversations I've had.
I'm talking to myself about old conversations and reliving them. John.
Things I don't like that others do.
People that drive me nuts. I can't wait to talk to myself about them so I can drive myself nuts talking. Dave. Self-appraisal. Yeah, well, exactly. Let me go to the board here. Will people approve of me? I talk to myself about how do I come off smelling like a rose. Debbie, in my life, the examples you've covered, there is something in me that judges incessantly. When you're thinking about people, you are talking to yourself about them. Do you understand? Rebecca, why it's so hard for me to change. I talk about why it's so, this is so good. I can't believe all of these people have all of these things to share. Dana.
Thinking about every
I am a perennial, perpetual, pained maker of things to do. I've always got something on my mind that has to get done. Chica.
We do it perfectly. And do it perfectly.
Oh, and do it perfectly, yeah. So after I make the list, I have to execute it perfectly. Because if I don't, what happens, Chica? Then I talk to myself about what an idiot I am. Yes. On the board, Gloria. This is a big one. Someone done me wrong. Yes or no? Betrayed me, lied. All I have to hear is a name that even sounds like somebody did that. And I'm in a conversation. Yes or no? I'm always talking about the need to change where I live, says Chica, not Cece or whatever it is. Isabella, if I don't get this done, then the other will happen and there'll be more hell to pay later. You must know Dana very well. Deborah K., making mistakes. When I make a mistake, I talk to myself about the mistake. Did they see this? What am I going to do? How am I going to fix it? Still off the list. Lindsay, this is huge for human beings today. Watch my face. How unfair everything is. Everything's so unfair. Yes or no? And I'm talking to myself, by the way, when I think things are unfair from this incredibly righteous part of myself that knows exactly how things should be. Namita, wondering about spiritual possibilities and what I can do to learn more. Brian, my children, I'm always talking to myself about my children. John T., the next thing I have to get done. Carl, I'm constantly complaining. I talk to myself about the things that I don't like and don't want. In the room anymore? Over there, Roger. Yes, you do. I am always dealing with and trying to reconcile an ambition of some kind or another and trying, and this is the conflict, to figure out how to fit it in to the other ambition I have, which is to be a whole man. And you need to understand that with great clarity. That conflict will never be resolved either by the image you pursue in either one of those worlds. Over to Denise. Second guessing my decisions. Yeah, how many of you like to make a decision and then talk to yourself about the decision, and then after you make that talk with yourself, realize that wasn't quite complete, so I have to have a little more conversation about this. It's nutso, Patricia. I know exactly how people should do them. And when they don't, like a little worm in an apple, slowly consuming me while the resentment grows, not because of what they did or didn't do, but because of the conflict in myself that's so sure that they should do as I think they should do. Yes? The board keeps growing. Bills are due and the car needs battery. There is not enough money. What am I going to do? Just general financial worries. And let me make something clear to you there, Steve. If you had $100 million, you would have the same worries, just not over the same things. Trust me. Shelby, not being good enough, of course. Tracy, the future. Anybody else in the room? We've got quite one more. Debbie. I talk to myself about how I feel, about how I don't want to feel this way, about how maybe I'll feel better tomorrow, what I have to go do, but I can't afford to go do it. Until my health is stolen from me. And I never suspect that I'm complicit in the conflict that's driving the debilitation of my own soul and physical body. Anybody else? Ellen. How scary the world's becoming. Yeah. Anybody else? Because we've got quite a list. Joan, we'll make you the last.
What if?
There's the great big encapsulation. What if? Sometimes I have an impression while I'm talking, and it's a marriage of a certain joy and a certain sorrow. Sweet God, how long are you going to live as a human being in relationship with an unconscious nature that any time it says or makes you feel, what if, you're fully engaged in anything that it wants to dangle in front of you to you to have a dialogue over. You can't for a moment believe yet, because you haven't seen it, that anything that asks what if is something that lives in mortal fear. But it never says this is a mortal fear, because it asks what if, as if in asking it you can have a dialogue with yourself and come up with a way to protect yourself from something that didn't exist until the mind saw something, was afraid of it, and then said, what am I going to do about that? What if this happens? How much more do you have to see? Before it actually dawns on you that this constant conversation that you're having with yourself, within yourself, is an absolute, actually it's worse than a waste. It's worse than a waste, because it wastes you and your possibilities to see through and actually recognize that your own consciousness is consistently dragging something up from the past as triggered by some thought in the moment, so as to engage you in a dialogue over what that may mean or not mean to you, as it presents the picture, then presents the conversation, and hopes it can get you to do what? I was thinking about this. So what do all of these things that we just listed? And that was great. I love it when we have a nice active list. And by the way, was there anything anybody said that you haven't had a conversation with yourself about? So that kind of proves, doesn't it, that it's really not just my lunacy. There's a certain lunacy that is inherent in an unconscious nature, and all of humanity is subject to it. What's the one thing that every last one of those conversations, of those dialogues, has in common? You want to answer that, Pat? What? She said a sense of self. Well, that's fine, but as always, what I want to do is I want to put, what's the expression? I want to put my foot on the neck of the culprit in this consciousness. I don't want vague ideas. I want something that is experiential and therefore actionable as a result of my willingness to be aware of that consciousness and how it acts. So I'm going to leave the question unanswered. I'll ask it in different ways. Now, you may not be someone who does this. I know in the years ago when I was young, I did this. Why do people whistle in the dark? Distraction. What else? Well, that's not, whistling is not to protect myself. Whistling is a form of consoling myself. My attention goes to, so my ears and most of me is centered on that noise, as opposed to what my attention is trying to do, which is terrify me with images. So I'm whistling in the dark. Yes or no? Now, does whistling protect you in any way whatsoever? No, I'm not being facetious. I know it sounds funny, but there's an old joke that goes, the two guys are walking down the street in New York, and one of them is doing this like every 15 seconds. And the guy says, you know, I know we just got started working together, but what are you doing? He says, this keeps the tigers away. He says, what? How do you know that? He says, well, do you see any tigers? I love that joke, because that's how the mind works. So whistling does not protect us at all. Is that agreed? What does the whistling actually do that we can't see whistling in the dark does? It strengthens the belief that there's someone there in the dark who needs to be afraid of the dark. Because you're not afraid of the dark, you're afraid of your own imagination about what may be in the dark. There is no other fear other than negative imagination. Yes or no? Why do we talk to ourselves? Especially in what we might call dark moments. Exactly the same thing. Because we're in the grip of some unconscious conflict, rudimentary in this sleeping mind, and it is conversing with itself about the conditions that it tells itself it's facing. And it talks to itself, hoping that it can finally, and you can see this, you see if you would watch sometimes, when that mind is doing it, what's it looking for? It's looking for a plan. It's looking for the reason why it feels that way. It's looking for a host of things. Maybe some rescuing thought is going to appear out of nowhere. So it's talking to itself, fishing, hoping that it will catch from the stream of that conversation something that is going to liberate it from the conflict that is the product of that conversation, including the consciousness that's creating it. Hoping that if I just talk to myself long enough. Now maybe you don't know what I mean by talking. There are various versions of this, aren't there? There's talking to yourself where you're actually talking to yourself. And then there's just having this stream of thoughts that as each one appears, it brings up a certain condition, and then another thought that's associated with that condition will meet that problem, and it will start dealing with that problem, and it'll hand itself off. So thoughts are being handed off, and that is the mind having a conversation with itself to bring a reconciliation to the conflict that exists in itself. And it can't do it. How do we know it can't do it? How do we know it can't do it? Because I'm 188 years old and I'm still a blithering idiot talking to myself about things that I've never escaped, regardless how much I talk to myself about them. The only reasons conversations take place is that this divided mind that we don't know is divided gloms on to, I wish I could show you this. How many of you ever settled on something at a certain point that, boy, when that's done, whew, yes or no? When that's done. And it never dawns on you that when the mind gloms onto when that's done, it's looking to have that done because something before that set that into motion where you were in conflict or feeling empty or alone, so that it came up with what you needed to glom onto, so that when you glommed onto it, you would have the security that didn't exist as an insecurity until that consciousness began to figure out how to make itself whole. So it comes up with an image, and then it identifies with the image of how things should be, the timetable. You get that drill, right? And then the moment that the thing doesn't unfold the way that this mind has decided it needs to, then the mind is in conflict, yes or no? And it believes it's in conflict with the conditions that aren't cooperating with it. It's not in conflict with the conditions that aren't cooperating with it. It's in conflict with itself because it decided things had to go the way that it wanted it to go, or it was going to be disturbed and have to have another conversation with itself. Another meaningless conversation. It talks to itself and it talks to itself. And to make the point, it keeps talking until it can sell you on the plans it makes again. Have you ever, most of us have bought a car. Have you ever bought a car? Most of us have bought a car. Now, you don't know this, but in the little dark room where that car manager and his salespeople meet, well, they're there to take every penny that they can from you. You don't know that one of the things they discuss is that they're taught the longer you can keep this person seated in that chair, the more likely you are to make the sale. So you have to keep talking to them and waving different things and bringing up different points so that and they don't know the psychology of this, they just know the result of it, so that the more time they have invested in that conversation, the more likely it is that you're going to close that deal. And I know that for a fact. My brother was a manager at a big car dealership down in California. So here's two brothers, Brad and Bob. And Brad was very happy for Bob because they work at the same company, but Bob got Salesman of the Month. And when he got Salesman of the Month in this big corporation, he got like a big bonus of some kind. And Bob was all up in the air and excited because he'd been driving an old car for a while and he wanted to get a new car. So Bob says to Brad, I'm gonna get that car. I'm gonna buy that, whatever it is I've always wanted. I'm happy for you, said Brad as he lied. A week later, Brad comes over and there in the parking lot at Bob's house, there's this old clunker. I mean an old clunker. And the price tag is still on it, $432,000. He's looking at it, he's thinking, this is impossible. And he goes in, he says, Bob, are you telling me that's the car you bought? You spent your whole bonus on that car? Not to mention paying way too much for a clunker? Yep. God, man, what happened? What do you think Bob says? I got talked into it. I got talked into having an enemy that I can't stop talking to myself about. I got talked into worrying about tomorrow. I got talked into looking at my finances and thinking, is it enough? Will I make it? I get talked into worrying about my health. I get talked into looking in the mirror and then rejecting or reflecting on why I shouldn't look like that. And then I get talked into feeling inadequate or bad about myself. I get talked into talking to myself about my health until the health that I need is stolen by the very mind that says it wants the health, that it lies it says it wants. If it wants health, it would shut up and let you have the energy you need to heal. I want you to know that every time that you are in psychological pain, you have been talked into it. Write it down. And then don't just think about it, study it. Find out for yourself, how in the sweet name of God did I get into this place where I'm stressed, I'm sick to my stomach, I'm tense, I'm worried, I'm nervous, and I can't stop thinking and talk. How did I get there? And I'm describing to you how you got there. Your mind and your familiar unconscious relationship with it never stops asking for your attention. And it asks for your attention by waving in front of you the image that when it's there threatens the very thing that it's already identified with that it says it has to have to feel secure. So the more it points to you what may not be secure the way it's imagined it, the more it engages you in what you have to do to re-secure that which was never secure to begin with other than imagination. Are we working together? Do you see this with me? If you were walking down the street, and we have some alleys here in Grants Pass, not a lot, but we have some. You were walking down that street, and this happens more and more. God help this poor world. You walk by, and you can't see, but somewhere in the shadows, say, hey, psst, hey, you. Do you go, oh, me? You want to talk to me? Thank God I was so lonely as I was walking down the street. Do you do that? You don't think you do. That is exactly what happens. With God as my witness, that is exactly what happens. You're sitting at home, you're having a coffee, working on a computer, working on something, and they go, psst, hey you. I got something for you. Thank God, because I was getting tired with what I was doing. I really need a distraction. What do you got? Gotcha. Because the minute that you think that it is you talking to you, then that moment it becomes you engaged in a conversation with a consciousness that is dedicated to driving you into some hole where, after it has drained you of everything that you have in that moment, give us this day our daily bread refers to a certain amount of energy that we are given every day. This is a whole other talk. I've had some impressions recently. Do you know that you go to bed at night? Going to sleep is a mini death. It's actually a mini death when you go to sleep at night. Now, how many of you are going to talk to yourselves about that? Yeah. I said, I'm not going to sleep tonight. Let me talk to myself about that. When you wake up in the morning, you are reborn. You are given a whole new energy, a whole new set of possibilities when you wake up in the morning. A whole new set. But am I aware of that whole new set of possibilities? Or is my mind already engaged in going over the problems that I went to bed with and the possibilities downstream where I won't have these problems anymore? You are never going to be free of your problems until you are free of, say your name out loud. That was pretty weak and miserable. Here's what I heard. You are not your name. Again, with God as my witness, one day you will know without having to think about it that you are not your name. Actually, from time to time, you will wonder whose name that is. You will. You'll hear your name, somebody call your name, and you will have to use proper memory to actually realize someone is addressing you. So, you get that point? Yes or no? Yes. All right. How much time? 15 minutes left. What have we been working towards? What's the summary? Because I have a really good story to help exemplify this. What is it that we are working to do here? I want to know how to bring this about. Yes or no? So the summary is, in essence, there's no healthy conversation you can have with yourself about yourself, or your life for that matter. Because all of those conversations, we've been talking about it, are about what? Look, I know the world. Do you understand this? The so-called spiritual, psychological, religious, philosophical, political leaders must give you an explanation for what they themselves were unable to do. And so if I can't stop the incessant chatter in my head, I'm going to come up with something where I can say the chatter is valuable. And I just have to affirm myself when I talk to myself, because if I do, I'll finally be free of talking to myself. And then lock, stock, and barrel, you buy these ideas. Because why? Because all you know to do is talk to yourself about what other people are talking to you about. Did you know that you're not meant to have a dialogue of any shape or form about the meaning of a moment? This is going to be Sunday's talk. I just decided on it. What do you talk to yourself about all the time? What were all of those examples? The meaning of the moment. And from where do I get the meaning of the moment that I'm talking to myself about? And isn't even me. This is a consciousness that has been conditioned over millennia to have conversations with itself, to free itself from the conflict it keeps creating with itself in a world that it can't change, so therefore it just has to keep talking about it. How do I stop talking to myself? Want to know? Stop it. Just stop it. I love that. Listen, there is no how to stop talking to yourself. You think meditation is the way to stop talking to yourself. No, medication, I said that deliberately, that kind of meditation is a form of medication. Just let me get away from this brain for a few minutes. There is no how to stop talking to yourself. And then you say, but I don't know how. You ready? I've been talking the whole time about this. The only way there is to stop talking to yourself is to actually recognize it's not you talking and not you listening. That's the only way. That's the only way. Because if you resist the conversation, aren't you having a conversation with yourself about what you don't want? And what if you go, well, I love this. I love myself. I love talking to myself. Why? Instead of because I love talking about myself. It's my favorite topic, which is why there's never enough dialogue. Because as long as I can keep talking to myself about myself, I exist. Failing to see that a dream self only exists in the dream. And when this mechanism called this body and this brain finally collapse under the weight of all those conversations and the energy that's been stolen from it, all of that conversation's going. So I thought this was fascinating. I hope you enjoy it. How many of you know the old expression, we've talked about it before, if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? We've talked about that, right? Because we talk about mutual dependency. Careful. How about the old, what is the sound of one hand clapping? What is the sound of one hand clapping? These are the things in the Zen tradition that were intended to do what? To finally get someone to talk to themselves until they can't stand the sound of their own voice. Thinking and thinking and thinking about what does that mean? How can I figure this out so that when I figure it out, I will finally have the aha moment and achieve nirvana. And if someone actually were to go far enough with their interest born of love of truth, they would get to the point where they would finally stop talking to themselves because they recognize they're never going to figure it out. And what do you think happens in the moment when the mind finally stops talking to itself? That person understands the sound of one hand clapping. There is no sound of one hand clapping. Now, why do I do that? You ready? Write this down if you want. What is the sound of talking to yourself when there's no one there who no longer wants to hear it? I love that. Well, what is the sound of talking to yourself when there's no one there who no longer wants to hear it? You talk to yourself because it wants to hear itself talk. And then one day, by some grace, and it will be by grace connected to effort, you'll realize, oh my heavens, I can't talk to myself about this anymore. Can't talk to myself where I'm going, what's going to happen, who I'm going to be, what this means, what it doesn't, who are you, what is going to happen when this, and what about this, and what about and all these things, and I've got all my life laid out and all these checkers on the board and the chess people hanging out and clowns and goofy people everywhere in my life and always trying to figure out how to balance that all. And one day I realized, you know what? I can't stand it anymore. It's too damn painful. That's when the talking starts to stop. Because for the first time in your life, you're aware of something asking for your attention by teasing you with a temptation, a thought of some kind. And the recognition that there is no obligation on your part whatsoever to participate in a mind that doesn't know itself at all. The second key lesson that I had asked and waited till now, I want it to come up because it'll help explain this. Then I have a story to close the talk. Would you bring it up? There it is. Read it with me out loud. The more we know about ourselves, the less we feel the need to talk to ourselves about ourselves. Isn't that delightful? The more I know myself, the less I need to talk to myself about myself. Why? Because if I really have self-knowledge, I understand that whatever's talking isn't me. That I don't need a conversation to explain the content of the moment or the possibility of any particular condition, high or low. I don't need any talking at all because it's there. And where is it? Right within my awareness. right within the living impression, back to Sunday's talk, that I'm having in that moment. Everything's spelled out perfectly. And in the awareness of that impression, all of the necessary actions or non-actions are also spelled out. Do you see it with me? All right, let's have the last story. From time to time, I use a certain instrument, meaning a storyline. One of them has to do with a man or a woman, we'll make it a woman this time, who has done some work in their body. They have set intentions, they have made proper effort, and they have, to some extent or another, made certain discoveries. They have gained self-knowledge. Now, when I gain real self-knowledge, isn't that the same as a form of being separated from former knowledge that wasn't complete? Isn't that what new self-knowledge is? It is the enhancement, if you will, without language, without words, of an understanding that was there waiting for me to enter into it, and then I enter into that understanding, and my former understanding, when I was a child, I spake as a child, that understanding is no longer applicable. It's still there, I get it, and it was a basis, but it wasn't what I was looking for. I found new understanding. Now I'm a little bit freer, yes or no, from my former consciousness. So this is a woman who has had an epiphany. And when you have a real epiphany, and this is what I was alluding to when I said, I wish for you to work hard enough for every day to be an impression that changes your relationship to the moment and to yourself. That's what your work is about, a new impression, because it's a new relationship with your own consciousness. This person has had an awakening, and that's what it is. It's a form of enlightenment. And with each stage of enlightenment, that person, by the fact that there is more light in this consciousness that now reveals more content of what is unconscious, that relationship is forever bringing about a kind of a move. My Father's kingdom has many mansions. It's referring to what happens as a human being is enlightened, and means now I see what I couldn't see, I understand what I couldn't, and now I am not the same man I was 10 seconds ago. Yes? So he, in terms of a physically, but this is psychological, he makes a trip to a new kingdom. He enters a new kingdom. Yes? Now, how many of you have had moments where you realize who I was, I'm no longer bound by the same way I was, and therefore we could say that I have, for all intents and purposes, moved in, at least I got my foot inside that new kingdom, yes or no? And I'm not going to let them slam the door on it either. Now, you've had those moments, and yet, this is what we're looking at. This man who moves in, he doesn't really understand that just because he has one foot, meaning there's a little more light of the new kingdom in him, doesn't mean that the old kingdom goes, okay, I quit, you win. It doesn't just go away. The conversations, the psst from the alleys, the dialogue doesn't just disappear because you've had some insight into it. But what it does mean is that you have a new relationship with that consciousness, so that you're not quite as quickly deceived. It's not as clever. Is a machine clever? Neither is your mind. So there he is, and he wakes up in his new house, in his new bed. He gets out of bed and he walks outside, and it's pretty nice. There's more light. Have you had those? I know some of you've had moments where the tension in the field of that reflecting surface allows you to see colors and forms. Everything has a brilliance, has a new meaning, even though you're looking at the same thing. Yes? He walks out, and as he walks out of his house, suddenly, all of a sudden, he looks around, and surrounding his house, he can see popping up here and there strange creatures he's never seen before. And he's stunned by them. And he kind of lets out a little like that. And the minute he goes like that, all of a sudden, these creatures that he's never seen before, they start making chattering noises and shrieks and howls. Terrible sound. And they no more start making that terrible sound, not to mention that he's never seen them before, then he's suddenly taken back and he's resisting. Go away. Shoo, get out of here. Because he's thinking to himself, I shouldn't deal with this. I'm in a new place. Yes or no? Go away, get out of here. But the more he yells at them to get out of here, what do you think happens? How do you know they get louder? The louder they get. Finally, he's beside himself. He keeps going in the house, sticking his head out the door. And when he sticks his head out the door, barely gets it out there before there's something out there, or some horrible noise. That was my squirrel imitation. Finally, he looks over and he can see across the way his neighbor, who comes in and out, seems to have no problems whatsoever with what he's dealing with. So he gathers himself up and walks through these creatures with all their noise, causing him stress and anxiety. And he knocks on the door and he says to the neighbor, he says, I got to talk to you. Do you mind? What's on your mind, neighbor? Good neighbor? He says, I can't bear it. I can't bear it. I swear to God, I can't bear it. What's going on here? I thought that I left all of that, these creatures, these fear, I thought I left that all behind me. His good neighbor says, well, what you left behind you is really just one level of the many manifestations of these particular creatures, because they have all kinds of forms, visible and invisible. And the guy says to him, well, I mean, I've studied enough, I kind of get that's true, but please, I'm asking you, how do I get rid of them? How did you get rid of them? He says, I didn't. Well, I don't see them anywhere. Neighbor says to him, look, sir, you have to see the bigger picture here. Well, yeah, I'm all ears. Like what? Good neighbor says, first, when you go out, they think you're talking to them. So they talk back. He says, what do you mean? They think I'm talking to them. Well, did you not trigger them in some way? And he thinks back, I did. And then did you not tell them to go away? Did you not engage yourself in a conversation telling these creatures to leave you alone? Yeah, I did. He says, well, the more you try to quiet them, which you can't, because the more you try to quiet them, the more they resist and react. And the more they resist and react, the more you resist and react, and the more you're engaged in this conversation with these creatures that you wouldn't be suffering from if you weren't engaged with them. You following the line of this story? But what am I supposed to do? This is where the rubber meets the road. You ready? He says, stop talking to them. Stop talking to them. Now, do you think, breaking into the story before I get to the end of it, do you think that when you have a thought, a feeling, a worry come into your mind, and you suddenly feel the contraction, the stress, the resistance, do you think to yourself, you're engaging in a conversation with that quality or character? Do you? No, what you think when you feel that is that I'm separating myself from this problem. No, you are engaging that nature and the content of that nature in a conversation. It's an invisible, silent conversation. But if you look and do study carefully enough, you'll see what happens, that silent conversation soon surfaces into a verbal conversation, doesn't it? He says, stop talking to them. I mean, what if I do as you say? Assuming, first of all, that he can. What if I do as you say, and they keep making those noises? Ready? Repeat after me. It's just noise. It's just a noise, an annoying noise, but it's just a noise. Your thoughts are just a noise that you don't recognize as a noise because they annoy themselves and everyone else, and you figure out you have to talk to yourself about how to stop annoying yourself. It's a new word. Don't talk back. End of story. Don't talk back. Now, I already know the writing on the wall, not just from the faces of the people in the room, but what I'm going to hear. Well, sir, if I could not talk back, I'd be awake. No, you will awaken by seeing that you can't not talk back. You will be awakened by seeing that you can't not talk to yourself. That you can't disengage in that moment where suddenly, and try to see this, when do you, as a rule, start having this conversation with yourself? When you're sitting and eating your pizza and everything's honky-dory, or you're outside on a beautiful day and it's gorgeous? Is that when you have these dialogues? Although they are still there, the remnants of old conversations. No, these conversations, these dialogues with yourself start the minute that something triggers a thought. And the thought that's triggered has all of your identity initiated. You know, like people like shirts with initials on them? Your thoughts have your initials on them. You pay extra money for that, by the way. So the minute those thoughts are triggered, all of a sudden, now I have to deal with the thought that was triggered, thinking that I'm other than what triggered that thought. And you're not. It's just the mind talking to itself. That's all it is. If you would work at what I'm describing, then you would see that that moment, and now I'll give you an exercise to help you work with this, because don't, listen to me, I hear this all the time. Please don't try to win. Please don't try to have control. Please don't think to yourself, I'm a failure because I can't stop talking to myself. Can you think to yourself, I'm a failure, I'm a wreck because I can't stop talking to myself, without talking to yourself about what a wreck you are? There is something in you that lives above and outside of, and yet contains that consciousness. Your task is to become aware of that consciousness instead of allowing your consciousness to point out what you need to be aware of so it can talk to you and drag you into its dialogue. So here's the exercise. You must not try to resist these voices, because I already get that. I'm going to steal up. I'm not going to have a voice. See you in the loony bin. Well, that's what people do. They become so suppressed, pushing down, repressed, pushing down all these thoughts and feelings, believing that the constant tension that they're in is proof somehow or other that they're able to deal with these thoughts. Unable to see that that final spring moment comes, then they're engaged in a dialogue with what a terrible person they are, how they've wasted their time and all their spiritual disciplines. After all, look at me, I'm a wreck. And who's talking to who? Do not resist, try to control or avoid these voices, this dialogue. But instead, as best you can listen to me now, learn to listen deeply. Sometimes where I live, I can hear at night, I think they're a northern owl, great American northern owl. I can hear in the woods, whoo-hoo, whoo, whoo. And if I really listen closely, I'll hear way in somewhere else, whoo-hoo, whoo, whoo. And I know they're hooking up. You listen. And there's been times when Pat and I up in the woods there have heard a dog whining, like in pain, or a kitten. If you imagine you're at home and you hear a little kitten, meow, meow. Now you know you don't have a cat, but then meow. Wouldn't you get up and fully extended your senses, try to hone in from where that sound was coming? That's what you must do with these voices. You must hone in. Not phone it in, not talk on the phone to yourself about these, but hone in. Where is this thought, this voice, this dialogue, where is it coming from? And then don't answer it or you're in a dialogue again. Just have this impersonal observation as purely as you can to hone in inwardly, full attention on what is that? See, if you even say to yourself, oh, there it is, you're still talking to yourself. Just that impersonal awareness of that sound, that thought. Just that's all you have to do. And if you do that, you will, because you have not used the energy to try to figure out what to do about it, how to gain more, all of that will go away. Instead, you'll have this beautiful awareness of the totality of yourself. And in that totality, in that awareness, in that new tension, you will see a new reflection of what it is that's talking to you. You'll have a new understanding. You got that? Last part, last key lesson for the talk. Please bring up the third one. I like this too. I hope you do. Just because something can talk or has a voice doesn't mean it knows what it's talking about. That is, unless we believe a parrot understands what it's saying when mimicking words it once heard spoken in the past. Just because something can talk or has a voice doesn't mean it knows what it's talking about. I'm not referring to the people in your life who talk to you. I'm saying that this mind always begins with something it needs to do, to get, to want, or that it has to fix. And the minute it starts from that place, it has brought you into the idea that something in you needs to be protected or otherwise pursued for your happiness. And the minute you're caught in the matrix of that divided mind, it is that mind talking to itself, and you are the one who is being used as it runs through that dialogue and delivers you to another dead end. Do you think you know a little bit more about these voices than you did before? I hope so. I hope you'll work with this. Let's take a break. We'll come back and have our dialogue.
All right, everyone, we're ready to get started with part 2 of our class, which is an open discussion with all of you. If you are on GoToWebinar, you can raise your hand at this point by clicking or tapping the hand icon that you see there in the control panel or at the bottom of your mobile device. And that will raise your hand and let me know that you wish to speak with Guy. And we have probably about 20 minutes. We'll run till 8:30 p.m. Pacific tonight. I do have a lot of leftover questions from our last class as well, and we're going to try and get all of this in. So just 2 quick announcements. One is that if you're not familiar with Life of Learning Foundation, we are a nonprofit located here in Southern Oregon, and we would appreciate donations to help us keep these classes going. And there are many of you who have been supporting us for a long time, and we thank you for that and for your continued support. And if you find something of value in these classes, please do consider making a donation by going to guyfinley.org/donate. You can make a one-time donation or monthly donation, and there are other ways on that page that you can help this work if you wish to. Just scroll down and you'll see more about that. And then the second announcement is just a reminder that Guy has a special workshop tomorrow. He has an online Zoom event that's sponsored by the Portland, the New Renaissance Bookshop, which is in Portland here in Oregon. But Guy has been doing this he has done this kind of an event several times with them. And tomorrow he has, you'll see there up on the screen, he's going to be speaking on the topic of enter the never-ending flame of self-transformation. And that begins at 7 p.m. Pacific, and you do need to purchase a ticket for that. And you can go to guyfinley.org/ticket, which actually redirects you to the New Renaissance book site or website. And $10 will get you a ticket to that event, and you're all welcome. And if you're not able to make that time, you can actually go ahead and still register, and you will get a replay link so that you can watch it later. All right, we don't have much time, so I think we should just jump right into our discussion unless you have something you want to start with first, Guy.
Nope, let's get to it.
All right, we have several hands up, but I'm going to get to some of these leftover questions first from our last class. So here's one that came in from Jennifer. I'm sending it to you here in text. Jennifer says, I contracted a nasty respiratory virus that has sapped my energy and made me sneeze and cough all week. I'm wondering if all illness is self-created and whether I can make myself better and whether I can make myself get better faster. Thank you. Signed, a snuffling and coughing fan.
You're welcome. I'm pausing because I have an impression that I want to be able to pass along. There's something in us that always wants to know why we feel the way we do. That seems natural to us. What I intend to talk about this Sunday is that you waste your energy trying to figure out why you feel the way you do. Either I feel the way I do or I don't. What more needs to be added to that? I feel sick. What more needs to be added to that? I'm snuffling. I myself, just so you know, Jennifer, it's been kind of a monstrous pollen season here in Southern Oregon. You lay in bed at night and if you don't lay properly, your sinuses are draining, you get a cough, you can't. I mean, what can I do? I can take the proper steps. I can, if I'm a naturopath, I can do the things that are natural. If I believe in Western medicine, I can drug myself. There's so many things. But Jennifer, there's this ancillary thinking and talking to ourselves about these kind of conditions where I want to know if illness is self-created. Why don't I study myself and then I'll know if it's self-created. I'll know if I'm complicit in its continuation. I can tell you for a fact that sleeping human beings are complicit in the continuation of what they resist. Resistance is the continuation of the condition you don't want. Resistance is the continuation of the condition you don't want. But you don't know that because when you're talking to yourself about what you don't want, it seems like you're trying to figure out how to stop being like that. How many of you can see some of that? I hope you can see it too, Jennifer. Take care of yourself. A little hint. I probably shouldn't do this. Wherever you live, if you'll get the honeycomb from the local bees and chew the honeycomb, it has a tremendous healing effect because it builds the immune system in a natural way to that particular pollen and the things that activate and aggravate the condition. On we go.
All right, I'm going to come on and read this question that came in from Mary.
Okay.
Before I do, I just want to make a note. Beatrice, I sent you a note. If you can look at that and get back to me while Guy is answering this question, that'd be great. So here's this question in the meantime from Mary. Hello, Guy. I have a question regarding powers and principalities, I believe you call them. And I think they can be either of higher or lower consciousness. Can you please speak of these a little? How can you detect them as they show up and how to deal with them? Sometimes it seems negative ones show up during positive moments as if to destroy them. Does this sound familiar? Thank you.
I don't know who I was talking to. I just remember I mentioned this because of a similar comment. Where we live in Southern Oregon, there's fields, and there's wild mustard, and there's wildflowers. You drive along the road, it's quite beautiful. Does every flower in the field open at the same time? Does it drop its petals at the same time? So then every flower, every tree, every creature, even though it incorporates and incarnates the same principles, does so in a time specific to that creature, a time that is determined by its creator, whatever that may be, whatever power or principality responsible for that perpetuation of itself. You can't know what you need to know before it's time to know it. Namita, you can't. But what you can live with, and what we spoke about today, is the wish. I've seen something, I understand. I want to open. I want to be opened. The more a human being wants to be opened, not because they expect some reward for being opened, but because they have seen what the cost is of remaining closed, the more that wish is answered in a time only answered by that which put the wish in you at the same time. That's it. Until then, our mind, and it's natural, Mary, I understand this, we're all that flower in one respect or another. The mind wants to know all about this and about that, about the powers, the principalities, about all that stuff. And I'm happy often to speak of these things, but never so that we speak specifically of these things as something unto itself, but always in the greater scheme of things. Because if you don't have them in the greater scheme of things, then you're talking to yourself about something you've imagined and deriving a sense of self from that imagination. Let's go on, Kate.
Let's go over to our queue. Namita, I was just about to unmute you, but you lowered your hand. So if you do wish to speak with Guy, go ahead and raise it, and I'll bring you in. There she is.
Guy, I think you just answered my question.
I picked you up out there, Namita. Yes, I did.
Yeah, I was shocked.
Good.
But yeah, I mean, I was just like sitting quietly today, and like these questions pop up in my mind, like, oh, what is breath? oh, what is, like, how is, like, where's the sound coming from?
Yeah.
And I always, I was thinking that, yeah, maybe I ask Guy this evening, and I was looking forward to it. But I mean, this is also a deception, right?
Yes.
That my mind is playing.
Yes.
And how do you, and like, I also wanted to ask you, like, how do you acquire like new knowledge, or what is the curiosity to know more, is that also a deception?
No, look, how do we get to the place where we allow ourselves to be what we are, but at the same time we're allowing ourselves to be what we are and what our consciousness is going through? At the same time, we're saving a little portion of our awareness and attention so we can watch it. Because you can't stop Namita. You can't stop Chris. You can't stop that. It's impossible. Anything that wants to stop that believes it's something other than what it's trying to stop. And it's not. So just let me save a little bit for myself. Let me carve out a little bit of that moment so that I can conceive through awareness what's going on. That's what that whole exercise. Can I listen? Then Namita, these questions that are natural, you can't get rid of these questions. It's like trying to get rid of Namita, which you can't do. You want to get rid of you. You don't exist. You don't exist the way you don't want to exist. Nor do you exist the way you want to exist. All of that is part of a dialogue that's gotten out of control over passing time, where a human being believes they can deliver themselves from their own considerations. How can I deliver myself from my own considerations? Finally, when I see that it is that self trying to deliver itself, then I'm saved from the illusion of Guy. On we go.
All right, let's go to Dawn in the queue. Just a reminder, you'll need to unmute on your end too, Dawn.
Got it. Figured it out. Thank you. Thank you, Guy.
Sure, Don.
One thing I've been pondering, if you will, seems to me that everything exists for a purpose. There's a reason, and that perhaps this incessant mind, if you will, that inner dialogue is a sort of computer that can be helpful if I take rightful ownership of it, or use it correctly as a great way to do certain tasks. Reason, for instance.
Yeah.
But so it's always there. It's like a puppy that wants to play and is always, bringing the ball to me. And, that's just what the puppy does. So it's my job to realize that. But there are times when I want to play with the dog, and that's fine. There are times when we need to go hunt quail or whatever it is. Does that make sense at all?
Oh, Don, look, as I said to Namita, and as I say all the time, leave yourself alone. We all come from this, but what is it that wants to constantly think about itself? Measure itself, compare itself. Where am I? What does this mean? I will say this much. I threw the note away because I wasn't going to have time to cover it tonight. A machine doesn't know it's a machine. End of story. A machine doesn't know it's a machine. If a machine knew it was a machine, it wouldn't want to live. Because a machine has no possibility other than what it's programmed to do. It is cut off. It is isolated in its machinery. But in our consciousness, there is the possibility of awareness of the talking machine. And in the awareness of the talking machine, the freedom from the identification with it. And then another whole set of possibilities that belongs to that kingdom. On we go.
All right, I'm going to bring in this question that came in from Beatrice. She says, a relief to listen to your clear, alive, and reflective voice, Guy, replacing the automated mechanical loops of noise inside our heads. My question then is, how do we recognize the wise voice inside ourselves and the voice of God whispering?
Don't miss Sunday's class. I'll promise to talk about that. I'll give you a quick clue. I don't know if any of you ever scuba dived. I used to do quite a bit of it. And in my fantasy, I believe that I'm going to be able to start doing it again. I love being under the water. And depending upon the depth you are, if you get below 100 feet, 150 feet, when you breathe, the bubble that comes out of the tank, tiny little bubble. And as that bubble rises and the atmospheric pressure of the water gets less, that bubble gets bigger. It's still the same amount of oxygen, but it's compressed. You and I, without understanding it, fail to recognize that this question we have about these voices doesn't understand the necessary way in which the formation and expression of thought takes place. We don't start as thinking creatures. We're intended to start as seeing creatures. And when one sees purely, there is a pure impression that has no thought to it at all. And in the purity of the impression, there's no thought as to the meaning of the impression, something I intend to talk about Sunday. Now, where thought comes in is when there is the purity of this impression, but then for whatever reason, whether required, necessary or not, the mind then wants to understand it at the level the mind can understand it. So the intellectual center will take that impression and begin to formulate around it things that are associated to the emotional content of that impression. So it starts like a water dripping on one of those sickles, what are they called? Stalactite. It just accumulates. And so you have the gradual accumulation of intellectual matter around an impression that had no thought to it at all to begin with. And that bubble comes up and it comes up and it gets bigger until the bubble breaks the surface, so to speak, and then I'm thinking. But it was never you thinking. That's the best I can do with that. On we go.
All right, we have Robert with his hand up, and I have one last written question. Should we get to them both?
I think we'll make it.
All right, I'm going to come on and do the written question here first.
Okay.
This is from Annette from last class. Guy, if we overlook so many things over the years, things that were not okay, and then it all builds up in like a volcano, and we yell about all of this, thinking we may get an apology or a mending of offense, but it falls on deaf ears, no resolution, response, or compromise. What do we do?
See, you're going to think that I'm speaking, if you'll forgive me, in the only way you know how to interpret it. So what? Somebody that I don't even like doesn't agree with me? Somebody that I've compromised my whole life to win their approval isn't giving it? My brilliance falls on deaf ears and nobody falls in line with the way I see things? Whose problem is that? Is it the deaf person? Because if I've actually said something true and they turn a blind eye and a dumb ear to me, whose loss is that? But if I think somehow or other it's my loss, that means I'm attached to and identified with the very person that I say I'm trying to fix. So I'm codependent. I'm enabling myself and them. See, freedom isn't what we imagine freedom to be. We imagine freedom somehow or other is this aloof, I don't care, it's not a problem, this doesn't bother me. All of the things that the mind says to itself when it's really bothered. If you're talking to yourself about a moment, it's because that consciousness has been bothered by it, and now it's trying to pretend like it's not bothered, or it's trying to find a path to escape from what bothered it. When you're free, things come up, you don't talk. They go away because you're not talking to them. And if they come back, they come back. So what? You still don't talk to them. And one day, they just go away altogether because they know they're not going to feed on you. On we go, Kate.
All right, we have Robert left here. I'm going to unmute you, Robert. And you can unmute on your end. There you go.
Thanks for putting me at the end. I just got the very thing you were talking about going through me, Guy, with the anticipation, which at one time would have prevented me from saying anything. Mm-hmm. So a little bit of freedom there.
Good.
I got into the habit of putting a pad near my bed because sometimes I get, and I say sometimes I get good ideas before I go to sleep or when I wake up. But sometimes, and then again, right in line with this talk, it's like it was in the ether. There's just a bunch of fragmented things going on. And I'm trying to go to sleep, and that fragmentation continues. And as I listen to it, I start to realize it's in a loop. And I've connected that now to my daily work, which, right, I'm trying to get good ideas that are practical, use imagination in the proper way.
Yes.
But now they turn impractical because of all this fragmentation starts to come back into it.
Yes.
And so what I see from that, on top of that, is how compromised the whole movement of thought is, even though you're struggling in a proper way to use it rightly, one center gets in the way of another center yet again.
Look, the reward of struggling to organize and attend to the movement of thought properly, the reward for that struggle is not in the organization of thought or what may come from that effort. The reward is in the effort to attend to that mind and what it is and what it does. Because as you strengthen the capacity to be aware of the fragmentation, the divided mind, instead of being dragged left or right by it, then there is a natural and necessary separation that occurs between the awareness of that consciousness and a consciousness that has no awareness of itself. It's good work, Robert. Keep it up. That's it, Kate.
All right. That's all I have.
That's all I got too. Bye. Do your work.